So Graham Plattner just completely unleashed on Senator Susan Collins after she downplayed her role in unleashing the Iraq war on all of us, including him. So Plattner served in that war, and he has been very outspoken about the PTSD that he suffered as a result. Cenk, how do you imagine this plays out?
Yeah, it plays out great. So Susan Collins is toast. My summation of this segment is going to be: told you. Run a real person, a populist, instead of corporate robot Democrat. I will promise you things in fancy language and never deliver. Schumer and the other idiots thought that robot would win. It's lost to Susan Collins every time. This time we're going to kick her ass politically, and you're about to see some of that ass kicking right now.
I love when Cenk prophesies, because usually you're right, and I like that prophecy, so thank you. So in a recent interview, Plattner was asked if he felt anger or any kind of regret for his role in the Iraq war, and here's what he had to say. He said, "Susan Collins voted to send me to Iraq, and she's also there to help Donald Trump continue this absolutely insane conflict in the Strait of Hormuz. If I have any anger, it is reserved for the political system itself and the people in it who view war not as a thing that has a human toll, but as a political game." And in response to his comments, this is what Susan Collins had to say, and it is absolutely bonkers. She said, he not only enlisted twice after the war was started, but he also went to work for a security company, a controversial one named Blackwater, after his term in the service was over. So I respect anyone who steps forward to serve their country, but the fact is that was Plattner's decision to serve. He was not drafted. That is an insane response, in my opinion, to anyone who had served in a war, especially one that she voted for and supported. But let's watch and see what Plattner had to say in response to that.
Susan Collins voted to support starting the war in Iraq. On 3 occasions after that, she voted against withdrawing troops. On at least 2 occasions, she voted to fund the war. Now, all these years later, instead of acknowledging that she was wrong, she's decided that she's going to blame those of us who in our late teens and early 20s signed up to serve our country. That somehow it's our fault that she and establishment politicians like her wanted to abuse our willingness to serve, to go send us off to fight in stupid wars that did nothing but make some people very, very rich at the expense of American taxpayer dollars. It's no surprise to me, because even today, she continues to not stand up against the stupid war in Iran. She continues to not stand up against any of the abuses or the idiocy coming out of the Trump administration. No, the answer for Susan Collins is that she didn't have any power at all. Her votes to support the war in Iraq, that didn't mean anything. Those of us who put on the uniform, those of us who joined the US military, it's our fault for doing that.
I love that he clarified in his response that they were in their teens and their early 20s when they enlisted, because that is what the whole recruitment system that we have in this country is very predatory. They go to high schools, they go to college campuses, and they recruit people who are young and virile and strong and maybe don't know exactly what their future is. They say, we'll help you pay for college. They entice these young people to enlist in the military. And then you have people like Susan Collins, who sits in Congress and makes votes and says, well, that wasn't my fault. You chose to go. And then you chose to stay there, even though now, like, once you're in the military, you're very much on a path. Cenk, what are your thoughts on this? I know you have more too.
Yeah, so she's an old ghoul, and there's a lot of these people that are floating around Congress, in fact, probably the majority of them. I remember when they were wheeling around Dianne Feinstein in a wheelchair, and she was mumbling and drooling, and Pelosi's sister was like literally rolling her around going, no, she doesn't mean any of that. This is how she's voting, this is what she means. And Susan Collins is another one of those like widgets. So different donors buy her, not just Israel. We're gonna show you Israel in a second because they're related to the wars. But I mean, the oil companies, the drug companies, she's betrayed you in every way imaginable. Now, I was gonna tell you a whole bunch of things about how she voted for Iraq and Iran wars and always war, war, war. But Graham Plattner already said it. See, now normally I'd have to educate you on that because our candidates would be the establishment candidates picked by dumbass Chuck Schumer. And I've seen this happen. We've been around, we're the oldest show in internet history. We've been around forever. So I've seen many races against Susan Collins. And then we would have terrible candidates going, while I agree with Susan Collins on Israel, they are our beloved ally and we should do every war for them. And while I love oil companies and drug companies, I slightly disagree with her. Well, how are you gonna win if you slightly disagree with her, but you agree to all of her framing? And it's not just Susan Collins. I've seen this movie a million times, guys. If you had my job, you'd be so frustrated because for the last 25 years, the Democrats do the same dumb thing on purpose. And you know, one of my theories is that they're paid to lose. The donors give money to really strong Republicans who say, business, corporate interests, foreign government, we must serve them. And they give tons of money to weak Democrats who are like, we agree with the Republicans, except slightly less so, but their framing is correct. And then they all get annihilated and they go, oops, did we lose? Oh, I guess those guys who love corporate donors and foreign governments are in charge. So that's how this game's been being played. I mean, covered Claire McCaskill and Joe Donnelly. I wrote about it in my book, Justice is Coming. But they're like two of like dozens, maybe hundreds of examples where they run ads. They run ads about like, now I'm not a normal Democrat. The Republicans are really right about this and that. And I love Reagan and I love George W. Bush, but please vote for me anyway. I'm so sorry. Well, that loser's gonna lose because he's telling you he's a loser, that he's pathetic, and that he basically agrees with the other side. Let me tell you about someone we hired recently. Great on paper, sure, but what really sold me? They were genuinely interested in the role, asked smart questions. You could tell they actually wanted to work here. Their excitement made their resume stand out from all the others. If you're hiring, you want a candidate who's passionate about your role. But you can't get that insight from just a resume, unless you post your job on ZipRecruiter. Now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/TYT. ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology finds qualified candidates quickly, and ZipRecruiter has a new feature that shows you the most interested, qualified candidates first, so you meet the right people faster. Candidates can tell you in their own words why they're interested in your job. No wonder ZipRecruiter's the #1 rated hiring site. Find candidates who really want your job on ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/TYT. That's ziprecruiter.com/TYT. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter. So what's super interesting about Graham Plantner is that he's so strong and speaks like such a real person. He's kicking her ass in the polls. He's now got a 7-point lead. We've never had a lead against Susan Collins. But since he's anti-establishment, and one other fact in particular, which I'm gonna show you in a second, not only are Republicans fighting him, the Democratic Party is sending Democratic legislators on cable news to say, not Graham Plantner, remember he has the wrong kind of tattoo, and I don't like his haircut at all. And have you seen his clothes? He won't even button up a tie. And he hasn't even groveled to any corporate donors. So Auchincloss, this corporate donor, corporate Democrat on TV going, oh, by the way, also lover of Israel, trying to push us back into the war. And he's like, oh no, Graham Plantner is unacceptable. Hey, jerk, what happened to unity? What happened to vote blue no matter who, right? No, they never meant it. Unfortunately, the great majority of Democratic politicians at the national level are not really Democrats. They're frauds. They are cutouts that represent the donor class, and their job is to get Democratic voters to lose and never implement our policies. That's why Democrats are so upset about Graham Plantner, not the voters. The voters love him, but the politicians are like, how dare he? Now, what is the one issue that drives them craziest out of all of Graham Plantner's populism? Well, let's take a look at this graphic with Susan Collins and Graham Plantner with AIPAC and their contributions, their AIPAC tracker. Oh, look at that, Graham Plantner is 0, not beholden to Israel at all. That's it, everyone in Washington hates him. Everyone in politics, everyone in media, they despise him for not being a slave to Israel. Oh, Susan Collins, nicely done, 1.8 million, totally works for Israel. Washington loves her. all the Republicans, all the Democrats. Yay, Susan Collins! She loves Israel, and every war she's forced you to go into for Israel. And now she rubs it in, and she's like, well, you made the dumb choice to sign up. Ha ha. Well, if you sign up, I'm gonna send you to Israel's wars because I took $2 million that you know of, let alone the super PAC money. So look, this race is over. Which American in their right mind is gonna vote for the Israeli instead of the American? So the only reason why all these Israeli assets won before was because they had overwhelming air power. And what do I mean by air power in this case? American media. American media was like, oh, incumbents, a great experience, wonderful, incumbents are great. She has a money in advantage. So she's a leading candidate has a money advantage. She's for Israel, she's great, she's amazing, she's wonderful. Oh, has the wrong kind of tattoo, cancel him. Do you know what he wrote 27 years ago? So for outsiders, cable news guys especially are lying. So like, we're gonna hold you accountable for what you did when you were 11. Okay, you were a naughty 11-year-old. The insiders, they're like gobbling up millions of dollars in corruption and driving people to wars that are destroying our country and getting people killed. They're like, I don't see it. No, Susan Collins is the wonderful, wonderful incumbent, right? Criticize her, how dare you, right? So now that we're getting past our disgusting mainstream media, who is one of the absolute pillars of corruption, guys like Graham Plattner are gonna politically annihilate people like Susan Collins. Yeah, as you're muted.
Got it. Yeah. The strength of the incumbency, it does kind of blow my mind because like, why would someone like Susan Collins continue to get reelected time and time again, even though a lot of people don't really seem to like her and she doesn't seem to be particularly good at her job? This is why we have term limits so that at the end of the term, people can reassess and say, did you do a good job? Did you do the things that I wanted you to do when I voted for you the last time? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't have to vote for them again. You should have another option. But instead, in this country, Nancy Pelosi has been in office for longer than I've been alive. And she's only leaving now because she's choosing herself to step down. She wasn't primaried out of there. She had some primary challengers, but who's to say if that would have done anything? Because again, almost 40 years in office, she's just been there. And the people of San Francisco, they didn't seem to like her very much, but they just keep voting her back in time and time again. And I understand that name recognition can go a long way, but especially someone like Susan Collins, who, as you pointed out, is aging well beyond where I think someone should be still serving in Congress. But just the fact that she can come out with this kind of response to Graham Plattner, the guy who very likely is going to take her seat soon, and not be worried that that's going to cost her something, that thinking that she is in the right to make that kind of a comment, it's so out of touch and it's so indicative of Congress, right? That is the problem that most people have with Congress right now, and that is why people are looking now more to progressives and to young people. Finally, we need to start getting some millennials, even Gen Xers, more into office. Just cycle like that's how it's supposed to work. Mamdani is inexperienced, and look at everything that he's doing in New York. He's getting so much done, probably because of his inexperience. You need somebody sometimes to go into a job and have the audacity to be like, why can't we do this differently? And he actually comes from the people. He hasn't been sitting in Congress for the last 20, 30, 40 years, so he understands the people a little bit better. And for Susan Collins to be speaking in this case, particularly about war and sending people to war, that is the epitome of tone deaf. The thing with war, what's the, I'm bad at my idioms, but the thing where war is fought by young people and is decided by old men in a room somewhere, whatever the idiom is, I don't remember. But that is, she's exemplifying that so perfectly right now, like she's removed from it. It doesn't matter, she can cast a vote yes or no, and then go home, go to dinner, go to sleep, Yep. Meanwhile, people like Graham Plattner actually have to suffer the consequences of what these Congress people are doing.
Yeah, so I'm super proud that Graham Plattner is part of Rebellion PAC. So he's part of what I call the rebellion against the system for real change. Support Rebellion PAC at rebellionpac.org. Speaking of which, real quick, guys, there's a bunch of populist candidates. That's why we started Rebellion for left-wing populists. Shoykat Chakrabarti is actually in that Pelosi district and was running against her on day one. And what happened there, Yaz, was that Shoykat started to pick up strength and momentum. And then when Mamdani won, Pelosi wrote 2 letters before his election. If he had lost, she was going to stay in the race. She had a letter saying, no, 1 more term. But when Mamdani won, she got scared of Shoykat beating her. And he's another rebellion candidate. So this thing is real, right? And then she retired. So right now he's by the way, in a really tough race. They put in another pro-Israel establishment guy to run against Shoykat. And they're like, oh no, this guy who is wonderfully pro-Israel is the right way to go. Don't vote for Shoykat, right? So check that out. That's California 11. Audrey Denny is another rebellion candidate in California 1. Amar Kampanijjar is also in California, and Tom Steyer as well. They're not rebellion candidates, but I like them a lot. And you know what's funny is this, so Steyer is not your typical populist, right? He's a billionaire, and what's he doing in this? Well, he doesn't take corporate PAC money, he doesn't take foreign government money because he doesn't need it. And guess what is happening? Mainstream media is attacking Tom Steyer. Even though he's wealthy, they're like, oh, he's not experienced. You know why? Because it's not about wealth. It's about, are you going to work for the donor class, for the corporations, for Chamber of Commerce, Israel, whatever other foreign governments are paying you. So when Steyer says, no, I won't work for them, I'll work for the voters, they're like, no, inexperienced, no, don't vote for Steyer. Don't vote for Shoykat, don't vote for Graham Planner. You know what, here's a really simple guide. I mean, you can go to rebellionpact.org, there's a lot of wonderful candidates there. But the simplest guide of all is, if mainstream media is against the candidate, they're almost certainly the right candidate. And they hate Graham Plattner. And they love Susan Collins. So the jury's in on that one, definitely Graham.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see what's actually going to happen in November. I always say this, I'm like cautiously optimistic. I don't want to be disappointed again, because who knows, a lot can happen between now and November, but there are a lot of really great candidates out there. And if only people knew about them and just remembered their names by the time they went to the ballot box, we would be in a much different situation in this country come November. So,
super last thing. I just saw this breaking news. The last poll I saw had Plattner up by 7, new poll out up by 9. It's not, I was gonna say it was nice knowing you, Susan Collins, but it really wasn't. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.